the hour, but hopefully this works. Hopefully this works. So I'll start chatting in a couple of minutes. All right, it appears to be working. So looks like I see a couple people joining, and we're just going to give it another minute or two and then we'll get started. But thanks everyone for being here. Okay, probably waiting. Hopefully, more people will file in, but we're going to get started. Thanks to everyone who joined. So this is the first LinkedIn Live we've done, or that I've done in a while. Hope to make these more of a regular thing. As some people may have seen this week, I am no longer with PwC. Resigned. Last day was last Friday, the 26th. So as of now, we'll be out on my own coaching the exam full time. So I hope to make these a weekly thing, either on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. We'll get together. I'll teach a little bit about just some of the biggest issues I'm seeing amongst candidates. So that's something I could use your help with. Please, if you have topics, if you have questions, if you have things that you would like to discuss, let me know. Certainly want to teach whatever's going to be most useful for people. And so today we are talking about fear and how it holds candidates back. Of course, the famous quote from FDR: "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." I do think that applies a lot to the exam. And there's 4 types of fear that we're going to cover: the fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the fear of ruin, and the fear of wasted time. You can really classify the 4 fears that people experience with this exam into those buckets. And I think hopefully for everybody watching, one of those 4 will relate to you more than others. And I think we'll talk about how they hold you back, just how they affect you, how they become self-fulfilling prophecies, and then also talk about some tactics for how to get over them. Because of course, the whole reason I do my coaching is that I stand by that the content is not the issue. Your mind is the issue. Execution is the issue. Your skills, your beliefs, and your mindset are greatly affected by your fear. So the problem is not fear. The problem is how you respond to it. The problem is if you let fear drive your results, drive your behaviors, because ultimately your behaviors are going to determine your outcomes. So when we're acting out of fear, when we're scared, that is not going to lead to the best scores for you, the best test results for you. So the fear of failure, probably the most obvious one that people think about when they think about the exam. I am afraid of failing. I'm afraid that I'm putting all this time in, so I'll sit for it. I'm going to get below 75. That is what I'm afraid of. And I think the huge reason that people struggle with fear of failure is they take failure too personally. I think it's something you see much more common nowadays for a number of reasons, but particularly with younger generations. But people take failure so personally, so seriously. They think it is a reflection on them, of their self-worth. And it's helpful to think about the idea that if you've ever heard the phrase, failure is an event, failure is not a person. Like, just because you failed doesn't make you a failure. And that is why people get so caught up in it. They think if I fail, it means I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I can't do this, this isn't for me. And once again, that gets back to the idea we just talked about. It's not the fear, it's your reaction to it. And so when you fail, that story you tell yourself. If you're we all have an inner voice and inner critic, right? And if whenever you struggle, whenever you experience a low score or difficulty, if that inner critic is telling you this means you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, no wonder you feel awful, and no wonder that is scary. So even as you're preparing and you're thinking of the future, you're thinking of when you get your score back on release day, and you're imagining that negative outcome, and you're imagining what your inner critic is going to tell yourself. Of course, it's going to be scary if it's that, like, beating yourself up, speaking less to yourself. The thing that is really important with this whole discussion of fear is just being aware of that inner voice, that inner critic, because there are studies that show, that when they've monitored brain activity, how our brains respond when we are criticizing ourselves is the same way as when someone else responds. So all these terrible things, I'm not good enough, if I fail, then I'm a failure. When you say that to yourself, it's as if another person is saying the same thing to you. Like, imagine if your partner, your best friend, your parent, your teacher, if they were saying those same things to you that you say to yourself about you're a failure, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough. Think about how terrible that would feel. Like, think about, you would not want that person in your life if they were that rude to you and that harsh to you when you fail. So don't do that to yourself. So you need to really, when the fear of failure pops up, you need to remind yourself, I might fail, but that doesn't mean I'm a failure. I mean, just look at the statistics. Only about 30% of all candidates pass on the first attempt, right? So that means about 70% fail a section. So why are you beating yourself up and taking something so personally? That happens to the vast majority of candidates, 7 out of 10 candidates. And most people who fail, it's not just one failure, it's multiple failures. So we're so afraid and we're taking so personally something that is so common. And think about how harmful that is. I mean, think about something that happens a lot in society, something that, like, more likely than not, if you take it as like a terrible event, an indictment on yourself, like, you're setting yourself up to feel awful. So the failure is the event. It is, and then you choose how you respond to it. You choose how you interpret it. Don't believe these thoughts. Like, you have to put your thoughts to the test. Don't believe it doesn't mean you're not smart enough. It doesn't mean you're not cut out for it. Doesn't mean you wasted the time. Doesn't mean everybody else is ahead. And just realize, like, it's okay to make mistakes. We need to normalize failure. We need to normalize struggle. We need to normalize, getting things wrong and learning and growing. That is the process. A failed attempt is not an indictment on you. It's not a verdict on you. It's like, these are tough tests. You learn, you grow, you see what works, you try something different, you get better. That's the process. So failure and struggle doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It means you are on the path. It is a part of this for everybody. So that is the fear of failure. Pause for a second. Any comments, any questions people have, I welcome them in the chat. We've talked about the fear of failure. So now we'll move to the fear of judgment. That is the second fear people have to deal with. And the fear of, what are people going to think about me if I fail? So fear of failure deals with how you feel about yourself. Fear of judgment deals with how other people are going to think about you. And we make these crazy projections and assumptions around what people are going to think and what people are going to say if we fail. We think, like, people are going to think I'm stupid. They're going to think I'm less than. They're going to make fun of me. Whether it's like your coworkers, your friends, your family, your LinkedIn community, social media community, we think that, like, if we struggle, everybody's just going to, hate us, reject us. And think about something that we are still running the software program. Our brains are still running the software from back in the day when we lived, like, out in tribes on our own. And at that time, if you got rejected or cut off from the group, it could mean death. It could mean if you were cast out from the group and totally on your own, that could actually be very dangerous. We still operate that way now. So we still think if people are going to cast us out for failing the exam, we take that as like an existential threat. Like, we can feel like we are physically in danger because of that. But that's just not true, right? Like, if you fail a section, your family's not going to kick you out of the family. Your firm's not going to fire you for one failure. Your friends aren't going to reject you. We are catastrophizing and making up something in our minds where there's no way it would actually happen. The future we're envisioning and how other people respond to it there's just no way that that would actually come to pass. And if it would, if you are around people who are going to make fun of you, belittle you, make you feel less than, then why are those people even in your life in the first place? That's the thing to think about, the fear of judgment. Anybody who's going to judge you and beat you up and make you feel terrible for failing a section, then like most people aren't going to feel that way. And if people are, they're not the ones you want in your life anyway. So that's something to think about too. Another way to think about, in a way, it could be a good thing if people do judge you, because then it's like, hey, that's a signal that they don't belong in your life. And I know one thing that's really tough for a lot of candidates is that their friends and their families don't necessarily appreciate and understand exactly what they're going through. For people who are not CPAs, who have never taken this exam, they don't know, right? They don't understand. They don't know how difficult it is. They don't know how long the process is. They think it's just like every other test. So when you're struggling, they're like, oh, like, I mean, I hear, it's kind of sad. I hear all the time, like, oh, you're still taking that. You're still working on that. You're not done with that left, or you're not done with that yet, which it's kind of a funny thing to say to somebody. It's like, how is that supposed to be helpful in any form or fashion? But regardless, but they don't know. They think it's just like a midterm or a final. They don't know that. And so I think that's something else to appreciate with like judgment. If people are asking you these questions, they don't know what you're going through. They can't appreciate the experience. And the people who have gone through the exam, the people who have taken it, who have struggled with it, who know how tough it is, they're not going to be, they're not going to be dragging you down either. The people who, with most things, the people who have been through the experience and done the thing, they want to build up those coming behind them, those going for the same dream, the same goal. They want those people to feel encouraged. They want to help them. They want to, it's like, learn from what happened to me. So, so that, I think that's one thing to think about with like the friends and family. It's okay if they don't understand. And overall, just most people are not going to be thinking about your exam journey as much as you think they are, right? You're spending so much time worried about what other people are thinking about you. You're not thinking about other people. You're thinking about if they're thinking about you, and the other people are doing the same thing. Like your coworkers, they're not thinking about your journey. They're worried about what you're thinking about them. So it's like we're all just projecting, worried about other people's opinions, but we're spending so much time doing that it's just internally focused. It's not actually, it's not actually just like judging and gossiping about all these other people. So we're once again afraid of something that is not even real. And I do want to say again, the people who matter are going to respect that you're trying something hard. They're going to respect the work that you're putting in, the difficulty. And you cannot let imaginary judgment from other people make you hide from the work in front of you. Your job, you can't. And the last thing with the fear of judgment, it's not like you can control these other people's opinion anyway, right? Like, they say stoicism, a lot of different schools of thought, religion talk about worry about what you can control, let go of what you can't control. That's another great thing to remember with the fear of judgment. Even if people are judging you, no matter what they're judging you, whether they are, whether they aren't, you can't control it. What they say, what they do, what they think, zero control over that. So why worry about it? Why waste your energy on it? Your job is not to manage other people's opinions. Now, the third fear, we're going to talk about the fear of being ruined. We touched on this idea a little bit, but it's that catastrophizing. If I fail, my career is over. If I don't pass quickly, I'm behind forever. If I take too long, I'm never going to recover. If I mess this up, everything's going to fall apart. My life's going to fall apart. It's related to that last point that, my friends are going to reject me. My company's going to fire me. I'm never going to be able to get a job. My loved ones are going to leave me. I'm going to wind up alone under a bridge. People don't realize that, but a lot of the things that they're afraid of, if you just ask them, like, okay, you're afraid of failing, you're afraid of struggling, and then what? If you ask that question, and then what, and then what, and then what, eventually, if you do play out every doomsday scenario in your head, the end result would be, I'm going to wind up with no career prospects, unemployed, unable to pursue anything, and I'm going to be homeless, alone, under a bridge. Because that whole thing where it's like, everybody in my life's going to reject me, I can't get a job, and then I'm going to be kicked out and alone. And I think if you just work through that process of like playing the fears out to their final conclusion, you realize that is crazy, right? Like there's no way that that's going to happen. Like, what is the likelihood that all these terrible things you're imagining actually come to pass? And it's called, that exercise is called fear setting, where you play the fear out. Tim Ferriss, podcaster Tim Ferriss popularized it. Definitely recommend that. Write down exactly what you're afraid of and all of the cascading steps, and you'll see you're not going to be ruined. You can come back from it. Think about, how many examples throughout history of people who overcame great failure, people that we felt like there was no way they would ever come back from it. First example, J.K. Rowling, with the number of times Harry Potter got rejected, and look at that now. So there are very few things you cannot come back from. So no matter what happens with the exam, no matter how you screw up, no matter the difficulty, you can come back from it. You can try again. You're not ruined. You can start over. And the fear of being ruined makes mistakes, all these fears, they make mistakes so much bigger than they are. If you think any mistake, any failure is going to cascade to you being rejected and cast out, then even the smallest mistake becomes a huge deal, because then you jump to your mind like, this mistake, it's like a snowball, it's going to grow and I'm done. And when you're afraid of making every single mistake, that's when like you rush, you panic, you procrastinate, you make emotional decisions. And just appreciate that, this exam does matter. Like, it can help your career, help you learn, help you grow. It opens doors for you, but it is not make or break. This one experience, one score, it does not ruin you. It does not define you. Even if things are hard, you can come back from it. And what hurts candidates is not when they screw up. It's not the setback. It's the spiral afterward, how they react to it. They make it worse than it is. All this fear is going to put you in such a negative headspace that it's really hard to take action and do what you know you need to do. So the question is not what if something goes wrong, because things are going to go wrong. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to screw up. You're going to fail. The question is, how do I respond to it? How do I not make it worse? The bad thing happened. Let me not make it harder on myself. All right, we've been through the fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the fear of ruin. The fourth fear we're going to cover is the fear of wasted time. But before we do, we have a question, or we have a comment rather, in the chat from Noah. Appreciate you putting that in there, Noah. Everybody follow Noah's example. Put your comments or questions in the chat. I want this to be interactive. Noah says, I just graduated college. Congratulations on graduating. I feel discouraged every time I reach a knowledge gap when I'm studying for the exam. One, I'm sure very, very relatable, very normal, very understandable. I'm sure you are not the only one who has dealt with this. Anybody else who's watching, if they've experienced the same thing, give the thumbs up, clapping hands, react if you can relate to that. I feel discouraged. And so, my advice to you, Noah, and anybody else dealing with this, we run it back through the same thing we've been talking about. The event happens, you respond to it, and that's going to determine the outcome. So the event is you have a knowledge gap. What exactly does that look like? Maybe that's, you practice an MCQ set for the first time on a new topic. You get a bad score, a failing score. Sometimes with these, people get scores in the 30s and the 40s. This is tough. You can get some pretty low scores. So, or maybe, you read a section of the book, you have no idea what it means. You try a simulation, terrible score. However, that knowledge gap manifests itself. So that happens. And then you said you feel discouraged. I would ask you to reflect on, what are you thinking? That inner critic, that inner dialogue, that soundtrack that plays in your mind. What are the thoughts that are leading to discouragement? Because very often our feelings come from our thoughts. Thoughts create feelings, create actions, create results. So when you feel discouraged, you probably are thinking some of these things we've talked about in this session, where, I can't believe I don't understand this. How did I mess this up? Am I ever going to learn this? Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Is this possible for me? Maybe you've struggled with a section for a couple of times. You say, how do I not know this yet? How am I still working on this? And if those are the thoughts running through your mind, it's no wonder you feel discouraged, right? Going back to that same idea, like I'm a CPA coach, exam coach. If I said those things to you, you would probably feel very discouraged. So when you're saying them to yourself, you're going to feel that similar discouragement. So you have to question those thoughts. Like in that moment where you screw up, where you get a low score, reflect on what is the dialogue inside my mind, and think through, like, are these thoughts true? That's something I want to mention. Everything we're talking about here, all these, the thoughts that come from fear, they're not true, right? It's like your thoughts are not true. Your thoughts are real. Your thoughts are not facts. And you have to question your thoughts and recognize that they are hurting you. They are making you feel this unpleasant emotion of fear, which is holding you back, making you procrastinate, keeping you stuck, keeping you from being effective. So question those thoughts and think through, is this actually true? This thing that I'm thinking, that I'm not smart enough, that I should know this by now. Like what is a better way to think that? Your ability to reframe struggle is going to be so important on this exam, to take something negative that has happened and these negative thoughts and flip them on their head. I am smart enough. I can learn this. I can get this. So Noah, when you hit the gap, I want you to say things to yourself like, I don't know this yet, but I can understand this. If I learn, if I try, if I grow, I can get better. If you look at, why you're getting things wrong, what you need to do differently, when you reflect, when you, see where did the gap come from? Was it, was it you read too quickly? Was it you forgot a definition? Was it, you mixed up concepts? That's something else that helps a lot with a knowledge gap. Learn what created it, learn what you need to do differently next time, and you're going to feel more confident. So that's a lot of my advice for how to deal with that discouragement. But I think just emphasizing again, like Noah, it is normal, right? Like, did you think you were going to get everything right on the first try? Like, did you think like there wasn't ever going to be a knowledge gap, right? It's like, these are tough, like we said, most people fail. 70% of people fail a section. Toughest test you're ever going to take. So much material, months, years in the making. There are going to be gaps. So that's something else. You take the knowledge gap harder if you are holding yourself to a standard of perfectionism. I will probably do a live on perfectionism later because that is such a huge problem. But when you expect something to happen, you're not as surprised by it. You don't make it as big of a deal. You don't take it so personally. So that's the last thing I would leave you with. Not, don't beat yourself up over something that's normal. DeWang commented, that thought of will I be able to get through it leads to discouragement. And yeah, that's definitely that's a great example of a thought that makes people feel bad. So that thought of will I be able to get through it? I mean, unless you quit, the answer is yes, right? Like if you don't quit, you can get through it. It's a cliche. The only way to fail is to quit, but it's so true. The only way to fail is to quit. So DeWang, and I hope I'm saying that correctly, if you keep trying, if you show up, but once again, don't just go through the motions. Don't do the same thing over and over again. You do have to change things up. But if you do try new ways of thinking, new methods, new tactics, keep trying, eventually you will get there. Like if you put time and effort toward learning a concept, if you put time and effort toward a thing, you will get better at that thing. So you will, I mean, I've seen it like over the years that I've been doing this. So like 6 years of creating content, my third year coaching, if you keep trying, you will get through it. And if you accept that, if you have decided no matter what, I'm not going to stop, I am going to get through this, then, then hopefully that gets rid of the discouragement because it is possible for you. Liam said there's this constant feeling of being left behind in my cohort. So yeah, I mean, that's getting to that idea of comparison. It's such a difficult thing. It really does hold a lot of people back. So I think it's tough because, for most of the CPA exam history, the only people whose journeys you would compare yourself to were, your immediate coworkers, the people just that you would see in person. But now, you see everybody online, you see like LinkedIn, Reddit, what everybody's doing. So of course, like it's never been easier to compare yourself, but those 30% of people who pass on the first attempt, all of them are going to post about it. The 70% of people who are failing at least one section, they're not going to post about it. So I would tell Liam, like that feeling of being behind, like once again, it's because you're telling yourself things that are not true. Like saying everyone is further ahead than me. Like I should be further ahead. I'm behind. I'm not doing enough. Like it's not a fact. That is your interpretation of like what is happening around you. And I do think it's important to recognize that like a lot of the a lot of these feelings are just coming from an inaccurate perception of where other people are. It seems like everybody's passing. It seems like everybody's crushing it, but I promise they're not. Like, people message me. It's not just the post, the public post. People send me private messages all the time. Like so many people feel behind. So many people are worried about this. They just don't talk about it in public. So the perception is not reality. I did run a poll one time of, do people feel like they're on track, like a little behind, different degrees of behind? And it was like only 20% of candidates were on pace with where they wanted to be. 80% felt behind. So Liam, you are in the majority. Once again, that feeling of being behind is normal. That is what most people deal with. You're not the exception. And think about when you're feeling behind, once again, you're thinking I'm behind, but it's not true. Like behind is just a story you are telling yourself. So once again, question the thoughts, say things like I'm right where I need to be. My timing is my own. Everybody's journey is different. Like you have no idea what's going on in those people's lives. Like I have a group that I coach every week. And one of them talked about, she reached out to one of these people who posted on LinkedIn. They had passed everything in 6 months, first try. And she found out, that woman had been working in public for years and didn't have kids, didn't have any additional responsibilities. So she had years of experience and was studying full time. So of course she was able to crush it and pass everything pretty quickly on the first try. But like most people, They're not in that situation. They don't have all that free time, all that experience. So, it's an apples to orange comparison in terms of like what you have going on versus what other people have going on. Siddhartha said they read that every master was once a disaster. So just keep at it, you'll get there. That's very true. Or every expert was once a beginner. The expert has failed more times than the beginner has tried. All of those, all those sayings, absolutely true. Good advice for sure. We have some other comments, but I do want to get to the final because I only have 7 minutes left in the live. I do want to get to the final fear and then sort of wrap up the fear. And if we have additional time, then I'll answer other questions. But, thank everybody for the comments. I certainly appreciate that. So the last fear I wanted to talk about was the fear of wasted time. And this is a big one, a good one to finish on. And, people think if I put in all this time, all this effort, and I still fail, and it doesn't work, does that mean all that time was wasted? That's the thought. The time is wasted unless I pass. And that once again, that is just not true. People get a failing score and they just think, and they look at it binary, black and white. I failed. Not but what they forget is that you are closer than you used to be. If you got a 30, if you got a 50, if you got a 70, you have points, you have knowledge, you have reasoning that you used to not have. When on day one, you were back over here. You're trying to get to passing. You're not here yet, but you're closer. You have moved closer. And when we fail, we forget that. We forget all this growth. We just, we're so caught up in the failure, we don't realize how much we have improved. And also, all we focus on is how far we still have left to go. And once again, you're going to feel terrible. You're going to feel discouraged. You're going to feel fear if you think that none of that progress matters. All that progress is wasted. It's just not true. When you retake it, you're not starting from scratch. You are starting from experience. You have knowledge you didn't have before. You're doing better than you did before. You're closer than you were before. The time is not wasted. And then not only the knowledge, but also who you are as a person. You probably have developed grit, resilience, dedication, the ability to push through things. There are other traits beyond the knowledge that you have, even if you didn't reach it yet. So if you're afraid of wasting time, you need to have the belief time is not wasted. You get something for it. So once again, the fear of wasted time, not real, a story you are making up in your head. And with these fears, a lot of them become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The fear of failure. The first one is the big one for that. Fear of failure brings about failure. How does that happen? And when you are afraid of failing, a lot of people don't even try. They sort of, they without even realizing it, sometimes they're not fully committed to something. If you're very afraid of failing and you think it means something terrible about you, a lot of people will almost subconsciously hold themselves back, because then if they do fail, they have an out. They have an excuse. It's oh, I failed, but I didn't fully even try. So, if I had fully tried, I could have gotten it. So you use that as a crutch. You use it as a fallback. It's I'm not going to try and give my best because I can't deal with the possibility that might be enough. So I'm just going to hold off and make excuses because that gives me a reason. It helps me explain things if things don't work out. It makes me feel better about myself. So if you do that, you are more likely to fail. Also, when you're afraid of all these things, how effectively do you study when you're afraid? When you're anxious, when you have these negative thoughts, you don't learn as effectively. You aren't present. You aren't focused. Just from a pure cognitive ability and your memory, it's not going to function as well when you're triggered by these negative, unpleasant feelings. And so once again, when you're in that bad state trying to learn, the studying is going to be worse, and it's more likely to bring about failure because you're not learning as well. Your time's not being used as efficiently. So I think that's something else too. When you give in to these negative thoughts, when you believe them and they create these feelings, it will create the very thing you're afraid of. I think that's a powerful realization. I want everybody here to really embrace personal responsibility and accountability. But it's you will create the very thing you're afraid of if you let fear drive your decisions and drive your behaviors and drive your actions. You can feel the fear and still study anyway. The goal is not to eliminate the fear. The goal is to stop letting fear lead, to stop letting fear affect you, affect your learning, affect your outcomes. Fear is going to be there. It's going to pop up, especially because often we don't control our first thought, but we control our second thought. We control our reaction. We control the stories we choose to repeat to ourselves. Replace those stories with more empowering stories. So you can be afraid and still schedule the exam. You can still practice. You can still read. You can still review. You can be feeling fear and do all these things. And the nice thing is, if you are able to do what you need to do to take action regardless of the fear, it's going to go away. That is what will actually get rid of the fear, is doing things the right way, taking action, studying. By trying to avoid fear, you make it worse. By leaning into it and embracing it, it will go away if you can take action and get closer. Like, I guarantee all the people who have passed, all the people you look up to, they have felt fear before. Anybody in life, not just the exam, anybody in any area of life who has accomplished anything great and worthwhile, they felt fear. They felt all of these things. They were afraid of failure, judgment, ruin, but they did what they needed to do anyway. They weren't always the most confident, but they know if you keep moving, keep taking the right step, keep moving forward, even before you feel confident, even when you're afraid, like, the right things will come, the feelings will come, the results will come. So the thing to look back in your journey, reflect on things. Where am I letting fear make my decisions? How is that affecting my results? And, like, what is one step I can take to take that, to get back in the driver's seat of what I do? Think about which one of these four fears, you don't have to solve them all at once, but which of these four fears is affecting you the most? And what is one thing you can do, one story to rewrite this week, one way to reframe something, one more positive, empowering thing you can do? I don't want fear to let people, I don't want fear to hold anyone back and keep them from passing this exam. One last comment. Jason Lamb said, does anyone ever feel confident going in and also feel confident that they passed? So I definitely, the thought I'd leave you with, I've seen the full range of things where, like, people walking out feel terrible and passed, people feel great and failed, and everything in between. So I do think that, like, that can sometimes be a tough indicator of how things actually go. Just wanted to make sure we got to Jason's question. I don't know if we got to everything in the comments, but the bright side is, like I said, I should be here every week. Next Wednesday afternoon Eastern time, we're going to be talking about manifesting and visualization. What's fact? What's fiction? How can you actually use it to help you? But if you have other questions that we didn't get to, please reach out. And like I said, full-time exam coach now. So hopefully you'll see me a lot. Hopefully you got some value from this. Like I said, you can beat fear. Fear does not have to hold you back. You're in control. You've got the power. You've got the agency. I know you can do this. People, feel free to reach out to me with questions, but I appreciate your time, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Thanks.